Thank you. Honorable Town Board, Town Clerk Judith DeVille, Town Attorney Tim Slodes.
Rich, keep your voice up, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much for hearing us. This is a very, very important hearing. This is to basically keep in place and up and running the consolidated water district number 1. Basically, the town, the board, owns 2 pump stations that are now interconnected, thanks to a very big public works project. You own 6 water tanks and about 150 miles of water pipe in the town that basically serve every resident in town with safe drinking water. Tonight, as a part of this hearing, you're going to have Mr. Phil Sapone with Raftelis. Their company examines the water rates, guides us, and helps us set the rates moving forward. Their company services hundreds of municipalities throughout the country. Also with us is the Water Advisory Board, who worked extremely hard throughout the year to get us where we are today. And we also want to thank Roberta Romano, who's been extremely helpful, Carol Murray with the engineering department, Brian Simmons, who's going to do a talk about the Capitol, and the water department staff, our professionals there, who have been extremely helpful. So first, you're going to hear from Phil, who will go into a PowerPoint about the rate increase, and then after that, we're going to hear from Brian Simmons, the Deputy Commissioner of Public Works on the Capital Works project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Sapone.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Mm-hmm. And can everybody see the PowerPoint presentation that I have up?
We don't hear.
Speak up, please.
Okay,
Can she turn it
all
up?
right.
Can she turn it up?
Garrett, the stenographer
Yeah.
can't hear you that well. Can you speak up?
Mr. Sapone.
Okay, Mr. Sapone, if you could please speak up, thank you.
Sure, I'll speak up, absolutely. All right, so I'm gonna get started. This is an updated 5-year water rate plan. The last one that we did for the town was back in 2019, and periodically we look at these rate forecasts, and this is the latest one that we have. We've been working on it for a good part of the year. So before I jump in, I just want to talk about some of the challenges, the financial challenges facing the water district. The first one is rising annual O&M costs, and that's being experienced by utilities across the industry, and that's just typical cost inflation year to year. So upward pressure on operating costs, each year. The next is the $53.8 million in capital investments that are planned over the next 5 years. That is a significant amount of capital investments for a system of this size. And we'll talk about how that affects the rate forecast going forward. The third one is limited historical customer account growth.
Philip,
What we see,
Philip,
yes.
could I just suggest that you actually display the slide as opposed to the entire program? In other words, it's very small on our screen, so if you could
Oh,
actually
sure.
run
How's
it.
that?
There
Is he
you go.
speaking too
Thank you.
fast?
And maybe
Okay.
speak a little slower, Mr. Sapone, if you can.
Sure. So limited historical account growth. So when these utilities, or when we work with utilities that have growing customer bases, they can spread their costs over a larger customer base. But account growth has been pretty limited in the town, so we don't really see that happening here. So that's just another challenge. And then the last one is maintaining affordable water service for all customers. So it's saying, given these challenges, we want to make sure that water service remains affordable.
Remains what?
Affordable.
Okay. I'm just trying to help out the stenographers, though, because if I can't hear you, she can't hear you. Okay.
Okay, that's all right.
Just
So
a
these
little
are the
bit slower, Mr. Sapone, if you can.
Okay.
And
And
louder.
louder.
The-
Closer to the microphone.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So these are the proposed annual water rate adjustments for fiscal year 2022 to 2026. Now I show 2021 here because the water rates did not change from fiscal year 2020 to 2021. So I just wanted to show that here. So what we're showing in this slide is we're saying that we need 8% more, given the cost of the system that we're projecting. We need 8% more revenue in 2022. We need 7% more revenue in 2023, 6.5% more revenue in 2024, and then 5% and 4.5% more revenue in 2025 and 2026. And the way that we would get that is we would adjust each of the different water rate components upward by 8%. So in 2022, if we wanted to generate 8% more revenue, we would adjust each water rate component upward by 8%. So I just want to be clear on that. And those adjustments were assumed to be in effect for the full fiscal year. One last thing I want to say about this slide is from 2022 to 2024, those are some higher than normal increases. And what I mean by normal is throughout the industry, we typically see, based on industry data, we typically see water rate increases of about 4 to 4.5% per year. And you can see that's what we're forecasting out in these years here is the more normal, more typical year-to-year increases. And we're going to talk about why these are higher than normal. So we're going to get into that. To make these projections, I use a Microsoft Excel-based water rate model. And it takes all the costs of the water system, it pulls them together, forecasts them out, and then it says, here's how much extra revenue you need to fund these costs. So to make the projections, we relied on fiscal year 2021 revenues and expenses, and we projected out into future years based on the 2021 budgeted amounts. That was the latest information that we had at the time, and as I said earlier, we've been working on this for a good portion of this year. We did compare our projected 2022 costs to the updated budget, or the proposed budget for 2022, and they were very comparable. So we felt good about our forecast. One of the things that drives the increases are the purchased water costs from New York City. And those are a little bit difficult to project going forward because we don't know how those are going to change. But we looked backward for about 10 years and we saw on average, they've increased by about 6% per year. So we thought that was a good way to project those costs going forward. And purchased water costs are a pretty significant cost to the water system. I think it's about a third of the total cost of the system. So overall, the operating costs of the system are going up by about 4.5% a year. I talked about the capital investments of $53.8 million. It changes from year to year, ranging from $2.2 million to $31.6 million. And we'll talk about what makes up that $31.6 million. And then we have to figure out how we're going to pay for those capital projects. And I sat down at the town and was directed to use a mix of cash that's within the water system that's available to be used. There's some existing bond proceeds, so money that's already been borrowed that we want to make sure we use before the town decides to borrow additional funds. And Ryan, I'll let you speak to the project shown in this slide.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Hi, everyone. Good evening. For the record, my name is Brian Simmons. I am the Deputy Commissioner of Public Works for the town of Greenberg. The Consolidated Water District number 1, it serves approximately 40,000 people through 10,500 service connections. The total water produced in 2020 was 2.6 billion gallons, and the daily average of water treated and pumped into the distribution system was 7.17 million gallons per day. In total, the system consists of over 150 miles of water mains, approximately 1,700 fire hydrants, over 3,000 valves, 2 pumping stations, and 6 water storage tanks. Before you now are the proposed future capital project costs of the Consolidated Water District over the next 5 years that will greatly improve each of these critical elements of the system. Water storage tanks enable a water system to satisfy the demand that cannot be met by the pumping stations during peak periods and in the event of emergencies such as fire. 4 of the 6 water tanks have been rehabilitated since 2015. This 5-year capital project plan includes the rehabilitation of the 2 remaining water storage tanks, which are the Knollwood water tank and the Fairview water tank. The 2022 capital plan includes the Knollwood water storage tank, which is a cylindrical tank made of riveted steel that was constructed in 1928 and has a capacity of approximately 500,000 gallons of water. The tank is in need of repair, renovation, and painting. The approximate cost of this project is estimated to be $3,500,000. The 2022 capital plan also includes the construction of a contact tank and chemical feed building at the Knollwood pumping station. The Consolidated Water District receives all of its water from the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, Catskill and Delaware water systems. The New York City Department of Environmental Protection has notified the district that it plans to cease continuous chlorination after December 31st, 2022 at the Kensico Reservoir, resulting in the need for the town to augment its current disinfection treatment processes. In order to maintain compliance with federal and state drinking water standards, the Consolidated Water District needs to construct a chlorine contact tank and associated chemical feed building. The approximate cost of this project is $8 million. In 2023, capital expenditures include the replacement of the Fairview water tank, which is also a cylindrical tank made of riveted steel, constructed in 1925, and has a capacity of approximately 400,000 gallons. The approximate cost of this project is estimated to be $8 million. The 2023 capital plan also includes $1,575,900 in water main replacement on various sections of the over 150 miles of water mains, valves, and fire hydrants, many of which are more than 70 to 90 years old and have not been upgraded. Also included in the 2023 is the replacement of the Knollwood pump station, which is the Consolidated Water District's primary source of water. The station was built in 1955 and upgraded in the mid-1960s. It has 9 pumps that range in capacity. The current infrastructure is reaching the end of its useful life, resulting in reduced pump efficiency, making it very difficult and costly to maintain. The total estimated cost of this project is $22 million. In 2024, capital expenditures include $4,038,300 in water main cleaning and lining and $1,025,000 in water main replacement. This work will take place on various sections of the water distribution system to increase the performance of the system and address water main breaks. The 2025 capital expenditures include $2,207,600 in additional water main replacement. 2026 capital expenditures include $3,500,000 as a placeholder for future capital work. This may include additional water main replacement or other work depending upon the needs of the Consolidated Water District at the time. The capital improvements outlined in this 5-year capital plan are necessary to meet the short-term and long-term infrastructure needs of the Consolidated Water District to ensure that the continued availability of high-quality drinking water is provided to its customers. Thank you. I will now turn back over to Phil to speak on the projected debt service costs.
Okay, thanks, Brian. So I talked about before that when we have these planned capital investments, we have to figure out how to pay for them. And the town had indicated that it intends to borrow money to pay for a portion of the capital projects shown on the previous slide. So what I wanted to show on this slide was the projected principal and interest repayments on the money that the town intends to borrow to pay for its capital program over the next 5 years. And the annual amounts are shown in these blue bars. So for 2021, the town was budgeted to pay debt service. And when I say debt service, I mean a principal and interest repayment on borrowed monies of $2.3 million. We project that to increase to $4.2 million by 2026. And again, that's a result of the project costs shown on this slide here and the town's intentions to borrow money to pay for a portion of these costs. So the annual debt service, or the repayments of principal and interests on borrowed monies, are projected to increase by over 80% from 2021 to 2026. That is a large part of why we're seeing higher than normal rate increases in those first few years of the chart, which I believe around 8% and 7.5%. Once we generate enough revenues to cover those costs, then we get the more moderate rate increases in the later years. This slide is showing quarterly residential bills by usage levels. So what I wanted to do was take those percentages that I showed you on the first chart that were saying, here's how much additional rate revenues we're going to need and how we're going to have to adjust the water rates. And I wanted to put them in terms of quarterly bill amounts. So what I did was I went through in-district customers who are billed quarterly, which are primarily or entirely residential customers. I was unable to distinguish between housing types. So the customers included there were those that live in single-family homes, condos, apartments, any type of residential dwelling. So I picked an example user which was in the 25th percentile of quarterly usage, at the median, the 50th percentile of usage, and a user that's consuming in the 75th percentile, up around 26,000 gallons a quarter. So you can see for the user in the 25th percentile, their bills are increasing from $62 a quarter to $67 a quarter, and then around $3 to $4 a quarter going forward in future years based on the projected increases. A user around the 50th percentile, their bill will go from $108 a month to $117 a month, about a $9 increase, and then going forward, the increases range from, it looks like about $6 to $8 a quarter. A user in the 75th percentile, which I assume would be having quite a bit of outdoor water usage, would increase from $203 a quarter to $219 a quarter, and then go up by about, looks like, $12 to $16 a quarter going forward. So again, just putting those increases in terms of bill amounts on this slide to help us understand what the bills are now and how those increases will affect bill amounts going forward. This slide is showing a comparison of water rates, including the town of Greenberg's water rates, to other water providers in the local region. And this is a really good comparison for a couple reasons. First of all, everybody is, the communities included are local, so it's a very good comparison in that regard. And the other reason it's a good comparison is because I believe almost all of these purchase water from the New York City water system. So everybody's in the same boat as far as that goes. So what we see here is Greenberg existing. That is let me back up. So the way I calculated these monthly bill amounts was that I assumed a certain amount of monthly usage, and then I multiplied that usage by the water rates in effect at all these communities. So that's the way to normalize these bills and make them comparable. So the town of Greenberg's existing water rates result in a monthly bill for the assumed usage amount of about $36.09. Given the proposed increase, which is proposed for 2022, is the estimated monthly bill based on the proposed water rates for 2022, which would be an increase of 8%, the monthly bill here, for the purposes of this comparison, would go up to $38.98. The main takeaway is that the town of Greenberg's water rates are very competitive or are lower than most other communities in the local region. And that's something that I've seen from working as a rate analyst for the town of Greenberg for about the last 7 or 8 years, was the town of Greenberg's water rates are pretty low compared to other water utilities in the local region. And that continues this year, even with the projected increase for 2022. If you remember from my first slide, I talked about maintaining affordable water rates. That was one of our challenges. So I do want to come back around on that. And a full-scale affordability analysis is quite a large undertaking, but what I wanted to do here was just do a quick calculation to give an indication of affordability. And one way you can do that is you can calculate the typical annual cost for water service, which includes the projected increases that I showed on the first slide, and compare that to the median household income within the town, which I had to project in future years. And US EPA has, in some other way, has generally said that if the annual bill as a percentage of MHI is less than 2.5%, that is generally regarded as affordable water service. And you can see that here, the town of Greenberg's water rates result in a percentage that's 0.3%. So that's far below the 2.5% threshold. And I'm not surprised to see that, given how competitive the town's water rates are with other communities in the local region. Just the last couple slides here, really just for informational purposes. What I'm showing is, what does $1 of rate revenue, so when somebody pays their bill, what does $1 of that bill go to pay? You can see it's about a third is purchased water from New York City, salaries and wages of the employees, debt service, so it's the repayment of principal and interest on borrowed monies. It's interfund payments for governmental support services that are provided to the water district, and then just other general operating costs. And what I've done is I've shown how that's going to change in the future. So I'll flip back a couple times so you can see how this is going to change. And what you'll notice is that the debt service, the repayments of the principal and interest on borrowed monies, which I talked about a few slides earlier, which was back here, I see that going up significantly. We're projecting that going up significantly. You can see that become a larger share of what $1 of rate revenue will pay. And like I said, that is the key driver to these projected rate increases that we're talking about tonight. That is it. That concludes my presentation. And thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Questions from the public? Well, it's a public hearing, yes, so anybody who wants to speak can speak for 5 minutes.
Really, the summary, as I understand it, is that we have a pump station that is very old. It's over 66 years old. It's over 66 years old. If we don't address it, our water could be at risk. And in the past number of years, we've made major infrastructure enhancements connecting the Rumbrook to Knollwood, water tanks, painting some of the water tanks. And if we hadn't done that, and if we don't continue to do this, at some point, the water could be at risk. We've seen with Con Ed, they hadn't addressed their infrastructure, and every year there's power outages. Could you imagine having no water? That's something that is unacceptable. So I really feel, based on the conversations I had with Rich and listening to this presentation, I feel we really don't have a choice. That's my own personal feeling.
Okay. Anybody want to speak from the public?
Wait, I
I
think,
know also there are members of the Water Advisory Board. I don't know if any of them wanted to speak too, but I think they're looped in. I don't know if Francis,
Okay.
anybody's got their hands up.
Do the Water Advisory Board members wish to speak?
That's what they were gonna,
Okay,
I'm not aware of any members on.
Right.
okay.
okay.
Maybe they couldn't make it, so.
We do have residents who are raising their hand.
Okay. Do you want to come up and meet with Judith and give
Ms.
everybody
Cherico?
names? Yeah. Anybody else want to speak other than Ms.
Louis
Cherico?
and House Sound.
does she know it's about the water just?
Yeah. Yes. This relates
Okay.
to the water public hearing, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it is. I'm really glad that I stayed at this meeting because I was just talking to Lynn the other day. Something has changed in our water where I live. And I live at 33 Oak Street. And the taste is just off. We've been drinking bottled water, buying jugs of water for several months now. And my daughter noticed it first. It tastes like chemicals. It tastes like paint, Mommy. And I guess I'm just so used to, not paying attention to I'll have coffee, but she's drinking the water, so anyway, so we've been drinking, we tried to boil water, cool it off, and put it through our Brita, and it tasted awful. So now I'm saving money to go buy a charcoal filter system, Berkey, whatever the heck it's called. And it's gonna cost me over $200. And, you know, somehow it's just, I know it's hard. You know, everything in the infrastructure is awful, you know, everywhere. It's not just the Greenberg. It's everywhere. And it's falling apart and it's old. And I think you just said that the Fairview tank is 1925. Was that right? I mean, come on. Really? It was built before my grandparents immigrated here 3 years later. Fairview, all the communities cannot wait. I cannot wait till 2023 to have good water. It's unacceptable. You had to, somehow, we have to do these projects at one time. And I just wanted to comment, because I don't know how much more money I could spend, you know, buying water right now. So, anyway, I'm showering in it, that's it. So that's what, I just want to inform you what's going on. It's not an accusation to the board, it's not anything. It's nobody's fault, it's just a lack of revenue that we've had. And hopefully with the infrastructure bill, if the money comes through, then maybe we could do the projects together in 2022. So I'm hoping for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jericho.
Louise, did you talk to Commissioner Fahn about the taste of your water, ever?
No, I
Maybe you
never
should.
met him before.
Maybe you should. Just have a conversation with him, and maybe he can look into it and give you some more information about it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Ken.
Right. Anyone else want to speak about the rate
House
increase as opposed to necessarily the quality of the water, which is a kind of a different issue?
I'm only reacting to what I heard, and a little confused, in fact, by what I heard. Phil's comparison of local communities getting their water, I'm wondering if it includes the for-profit companies within the comparison. I understand for-profit is going to have a higher rate structure. We are not operating a water company for profit, are we? So is the comparison possible to be shown just for nonprofit local communities against Greenberg? I think that would be the fair way to present it. I heard that this services 40,000 people. Well, that's not the entire population of Greenberg, is it? So there are other water sources which operate for profit. I believe Suez Water is the name that services the other part of Greenberg. So, Mr. Feiner, this is not the water company that serves everyone in Greenberg, is it? No. Now let's start from the point that everyone seems to buy their water from New York City. Fine. What does New York City charge us? And how much are we charging the customers? How does that comparison work among other local communities? We saw a lot of charts, we heard a lot of information, but the reality is it's stacked to present something that may not be a truthful conclusion, because we're not getting the right data in a comparative form. Finally, the Fairview water tank. We had that discussion here a few years back, didn't we? And we didn't do anything about it. In fact, the entire problem with the water structure is that we haven't done anything for years, and only recently we've appointed a new water board, are steps being taken to correct decades of non-performance on our part in worrying about how our system is corroding. So really, under your watch, Mr. Finer, you've let the system fall into disrepair and are only now making an effort to do so. It's good because interest rates are down. Certainly it's a good time to do it, and maybe there's federal funds available too. But the basis of this presentation was not a fair one to the people who actually buy their water through Greenberg. And the comparison should be against those companies that aren't seeking to make a profit on it, but only those that operate like Greenberg, basically at break even.
Anyone else? No, then I'd like to.
Well, anybody remotely who wants to speak?
Then I'd like to move that we adjourn the hearing.
We're just trying to find out.
We'll close the hearing?
Close the hearing and leave the record open until Friday at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Rich, can I just make one other
there a
comment?
second?
Did you say that we have a water advisory board and they recommend these rate increases?
They did, and
Okay.
they worked extremely hard. They put in a lot of hours, and, I mean, they really dug into the weeds. And I give them a lot of credit as a volunteer board, how much time they put in. They really did.
Those are private town citizens?
Yes, they're
But
residents.
Rich, isn't it also true that we've been doing painting and caring for other water tanks within the district?
That's absolutely true. 4-year tanks are completely redone, and the last 2 are scheduled over the next few years. So, just to be clear, the town has been very active regularly of maintaining our system. These are actions like our pump station. It's at the end of its useful life, you heard from Brian. So it's time to redo this. It's not that it's not working, it's just, it's time to upgrade. And I will say, I heard one other thing, Carol Murray in the engineering department is aggressively seeking these grants and funding. I think she's got 3 applications in now. We're very hopeful that we'll get some of this infrastructure money. And, now we have the ability to work on the older pump station because the 2 are connected. And that project's, we're in the punch list item now. So we're almost 100% completely done. That now enables us to do the work we need to on the older pump station. That was critical. And this board passed that some years ago. And I got to give a lot of credit to Victor Carozzi, my predecessor, because he really focused on the water. And I know the Water Advisory Board came in under his watch, and the transmission main was his push. So he really did a lot of work. He was a real water guy. In fact, I think that's what he's doing now in Florida. But this was his pet project. It was the water department.
And I just want to ask you a question about that. I mean, it's fairly monumental that we're in the punch list phase of that, what did you call it? The water
transmission main.
The water transmission main. We spent a number of years working on that. I mean, that's really worth celebrating.
Yeah.
I don't recall any major issues coming before the board with respect to that.
No.
That's really remarkable that such a huge project was completed without so much as a hiccup.
It really is, that's absolutely fact. When you look at it was almost a $9 million project.
Sure.
It included boring under the parkways.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean.
Wait, how many miles again? They're fairly far apart.
Brian, you know the distance? It's a quick
Estimate.
test. It's a quick
Yeah,
test, Brian.
Yeah, it was a few miles, yes.
So you did all this work, and outside of
Excuse
one
me, but it's a
area-
few miles through a residential neighborhood
Yeah.
And
underneath the Sprainbrook
and under
Parkway.
a highway, yeah.
Come out the
Exactly.
other side. Right.
This is, when you
Those
think
are hard
about,
miles.
some of the other projects out there and the complaints and the concerns people have, this went relatively unnoticed. And I got to give a lot of credit to Carol Murray and Arcadis, and again, our water team. You got a lot of people that really care about this system and really put a lot of time in, and it's a credit to them, and it's a benefit to the residents of this town.
So
Okay, Paul, I think you made a
thank you to
motion.
you. Thank you
I
to
just
you
wanna make a
and your
comment.
team that's done such a great job.
No, it really, we got a lot of great professionals working for the town.
We now have redundancy. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also have to recognize the neighbors that did live on the street that we dug up to put the pipes through, because obviously it was a significant disruption to them. You know, we're all going to have the benefit of it, but they actually lived through not getting into their driveways, having to park elsewhere, maybe being in their driveway, and all of a sudden they can't get out because there's a trench. So we give a lot of credit to them, and very few actual complaints, you know, some little tweaking as to how things had to be done. When I first came on the board in 2006, I got the typical tour of all the facilities. I was very shocked at the pump station, what we're now going to start calling the old pump station, but the pump station and how badly it was leaking. And you couldn't shut off the leak because we didn't have any redundancy. This project that we're talking about had to happen. It had to happen, and there's planning that was going on for over a decade and looking at different routes. How do we avoid going down those residential streets? Should we go up towards Dobbs Ferry Road instead, or should we actually cut through the residential streets? All these decisions were worked out. Engineers were looking at all these different things, and how do we actually make this thing happen? And it's almost like we should have a ribbon cutting for this, because it's so enormous.
Absolutely.
It's so enormous, because
It's huge.
most people
I
don't
know.
realize that there was a pipe separating you from not having water for a very long time, because we had no redundancy. There was one source of water to your home, to your business, and that was it. And that pump station was leaking, but we couldn't fix it. We couldn't even try to close the valve because we didn't know what would happen if we did. That is no longer the case because of this project. We can now do the second phase. The money for that original phase is not what's before us here, correct?
Correct.
This is now what we can do because we did the transmission main. Now we can actually replace the old pump station so that the chance of that failing becomes very, very small, because it's going to be state-of-the-art, brand new, and a lot of work has gone into that. But so yes, it's going to be, I live in this water district, it's going to be tough. The rates are going to go up, but they have to in order to ensure that we actually have reliable water. You could live for a while without electricity, even though you don't like it. You know, you could even probably live, you know, without having oil delivered for a couple of days. You can't go on without water. And the fire suppression systems, they're all based on water. It's a disaster waiting to happen, and we are well on our way to avoiding that disaster. So this is not just about money, it's about life safety, and what we just did with this transmission main.
Okay, and Paul, you made a motion to close the public hearing? No, I don't know if we're having a second.
No.
So Paul, you made a motion, I think there's a motion on the floor, and I don't know if there was a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now.